Hi guys, this is Robin, your host for the day. I hope you and your family are keeping well and safe. Welcome again to yet another event by Designhill. And today we will be discussing using data and analytics to improve digital advertising impact. Today's event is brought to you by Designhill, world's leading creative marketplace that caters to the creative needs of businesses and individuals alike who can source high quality designs from professional designers and buy unique products created by independent artists. So, moving ahead, let me introduce our speaker for today. We have with us Sriram. Sriram has 20 plus years of experience in business analytics and insights. As a consultant and a media agency practitioner, he has driven growth through data informed decisions for blue chip clients across industries spanning retail, pharma, CPG, consumer technology, and financial services. He has guest lectured at NYU, Columbia University, and Stevens Institute of Technology. And in his free time, he enjoys hiking and playing chess. Thank you for joining us today, Shriram. Can you please say a quick hi to the audience?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Great. So before we start the session, here is a big announcement. We are giving away certificates to the attendees who will stick till the end of the session. You just can't miss this chance. So stay tuned till the very end. Also, you can take a screenshot of this event, put on your Twitter, use hashtag Designhill events, tag Designhill and Shriram. The Twitter handles will be in the chat box. One lucky winner will have a chance to win a print shop gift card worth $50. Having said that, let's quickly look at what Designhill is all about.
Need to get your parents off your back? Head to the world's #1 creative marketplace, Designhill.
When I started my photography business, I needed something that said, this was more than just a hobby. It's not a hobby, Mom. That's why I went to Designhill and got an amazing logo, super fast, at a price I could afford. The process was easy using Designhill's logo maker. Just enter the name of your business, then pick out a number of designs that inspire you. I'll pick this one and that one looks cute. Then pick your colors or let the system decide. Add some more info like a slogan, the industry your business is in, and your budget. The logo maker, using machine learning and artificial intelligence, will design thousands of logo variants that you can choose from and adapt. In fact, I was able to get everything from business cards to t-shirt design and complete social media kit, all with the click of a button. With that, I'm all set. Now everyone I meet knows I'm a legit photographer. Even my mom. It's real. That's decaf.
Let the world know it's real and build your brand with Designhill.
All right. So that was all about Designhill. And now we are all set to start the session. Guys, if you have anything that you would like to ask Shriram, do put it under questions tab. We have rolled out a few polls in the poll section. Don't forget to answer them. So Shriram, let's begin with the session. Over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Robin. Let me bring up my presentation. And once again, really appreciate everyone taking time on a Friday to attend this session. The topic is using data and analytics to improve digital advertising. It's a topic that's close to my heart, and I hope you enjoy the content as much as I enjoyed putting it together. Before we begin, just one more quick introduction, on the back of what Robin mentioned. My name is Sriram Padmanabhan. I go by Ram. I have over 20 years of experience in analytics and insights across multiple industries. I worked in a media agency. I worked on the client side, and I've been a consultant to several companies in pharma, retail, CPG, among other industries. In my free time, when I get a chance, I like going out just to peel away from the screen that we are all glued to these days. I also like solving puzzles, and if anyone wants to hit me up later on that, that'll be good to chat about. Okay, so we're here to talk about digital advertising and about data and analytics. just to step back for a moment, what is the reason why it's so important, right? So globally, companies spent about $378 billion on digital advertising in 2020, and this is only expected to keep growing, and it's about to grow to about $650 billion by 2024. So this is a massive industry that represents a huge opportunity for companies that are, pure play e-commerce or a mix of brick and mortar and e-commerce. So everyone needs to be aware of the size of this opportunity and be able to take advantage of it. Contrast that with what's happening in the traditional media. By it, I mean print or traditional out-of-home or even linear TV. Those have been declining in importance. So for example, from 2015 to 2020, digital represented about 30% of all ad dollars in 2015, and it grew to be about 60% in 2020. And again, that's going to keep growing. For these reasons, it's important to figure out how to take advantage of the agility and automation that digital offers. And by automation, you all are familiar with the fact that you could set auto bids on Google. And in terms of fluidity, if you advertise on Facebook, they are able to fluidly move dollars between Instagram and Facebook, for instance, based on who's the right audience and who's really engaging with your ads. So for all those reasons, it's important to think about how to take advantage of the space. For a second, imagine you're a skateboard seller, right? We are coming off the back of the Olympics, and we all saw the great moves that skateboarders did. So imagine for a second that you are selling skateboards and you're advertising on two different partner sites. Call them ESPN Sports and BC Sports. So let's dive into point number one that I have to make, which is, clearly in partner A and partner B, you have the same number of impressions, but you're getting more clicks in partner B and more orders in partner B. And you're thinking to yourself, yeah, effectiveness is super, in partner B compared to partner A. And, maybe we go more into partner B, start investing more into partner B. But I'm sure you're all thinking there's something here that you need to consider. And yes, clearly that's the CPM. So cost per 1,000 impressions, once you put that in perspective, partner B looks actually more expensive, right? 20% more expensive. And the cost per order, therefore, in partner A actually comes out looking much stronger. So based on this, you would pick partner A. So in reality, it's not just about effectiveness, which I define here as orders per impression, but it's also about the cost per order. So really, what we need to keep in mind when thinking about these decisions is the combination of effectiveness and efficiency. Someone once joked, none of these presentations are complete without a 2x2 matrix, and so I didn't want you to wait too long. So there's my 2x2 of looking at effectiveness on the y-axis, efficiency on the x-axis, and you want to have most of your campaigns mapped out like this, or all of your campaigns mapped out like this, so that you can weed out the ones in red, invest more behind the ones in green, and figure out ways to improve those in yellow. It's something we do constantly. I've worked with a retailer who, on a monthly basis, we would analyze the campaign's performance and do exactly this of leaving some of those campaigns out for the future and investing more behind some others as we go forward. Going to point number two, or just before that, let me summarize here. Map out effectiveness versus efficiency of your tactics and partners as you figure out investment decisions. Point number two, just zooming out a little bit, we looked at partner A and partner B in display, but again, with the skateboard example, let's say you are going all into display and you're seeing that as you spend more in a given week or month, your revenue is going up. So someone who's looking at this might be tempted to think, hey, this is a nice linear relationship and a straight line. Let's keep investing. But we all know life doesn't move in a straight line, and we have to be prepared for diminishing returns. So over time, as you spend more, we have to expect the ROI to start to go down in marginal terms. And therefore, be it revenue, I'm showing revenue here, or profit, you might have to consider giving yourself a threshold and starting to peel back or dial back your spend based on how much you're willing to take in terms of that, in terms of the revenue per dollar or bottom line profit per dollar. So to sum up that point, it's about allocating spend, not just based on a point in time ROI estimate, but based on marginal returns. So now you're monitoring performance for display, which is what we just looked at, but how about looking at it relative to other channels, right? So as your business is growing, you're likely to invest in multiple channels, you're going to diversify. And in this example, let's say you're going to social media with that skateboard ad. Let's say you go onto Facebook and you're trying to find more audience that you can speak to and get engagement from. And let's say that the first dollars you've been investing in display are looking like this brown line, while social, there's a lot of marginal ROI to be picked up as you start investing, and the green line demonstrates how that performance is coming about. Clearly, let's say between about $700 to $1,000 or even $1,200, the marginal ROI of social is very strong, and it probably behooves you to invest 70% of your budget in social and 30% in display, or 60-40. But at a point where you see this intersection, pretty much the ROIs are equivalent between them, and you might consider investing 50-50 of your budget in display and social. But as time goes on, or as you spend more, the marginal returns are actually flattening out on social. So this is where you would now revert much more to, let's say, 60-40 in favor of display rather than in favor of social. So clearly, the idea of marginal returns is not just about a given channel. It's about helping you making decisions in allocating budget cross-channel. So shift budgets dynamically based on cross-channel saturation levels, and this can change depending on your product or depending on what channels you go after or what platforms you invest in. So in this example, going back a second, so I mentioned you invested in social, but maybe this is tapped out because the young audience that you're going after is much more likely to be on Snapchat or TikTok. So if you start investing in those platforms, this curve might well shift. And there again, you'll have to think about decisions differently and plot out how the saturation looks based on that change that you just made from being on Facebook to being on Snapchat. Any questions so far that you would like me to pause and answer? I see a couple of them.
Yeah, Sriram, we have a couple of questions in the questions tab.
Yeah.
So let's take this question from Jane. He's asking how to use digital marketing analytics and not just web analytics to turn your business objectives into measurable outcomes. Any tips for small businesses?
Yeah. So there's a combination of things you can do when it comes to analytics. You can think about the brand building aspects, which is also called, upper funnel or higher in the awareness funnel. And then you can also measure how you're doing in terms of conversions, which, like you rightly mentioned, there's web analytics or site analytics that you can rely on. However, depending on your business objective, let's take the example of, upper funnel brand building. You would want to run some surveys, like brand lift surveys through YouTube or on Facebook, depending on the platform. Or if you're able to invest in a third-party provider like Kantar or Upwave, you can use those to run brand lift studies. When it comes to lower funnel, I'm going to talk a little bit later about this too. You would want to include both your offline sales and online sales to measure a holistic view of how your business is doing. So that's when it comes to sales. But there's also mid-funnel KPIs, like is your other number of people who are visiting your web page or spending time on your page improving. Does that help answer your question?
Great. So thank you, Sriram, for answering that. And I hope, Jane, this answers your question. So Sriram, let's take the next question from Catherine. She's asking, how do you think marketers can track and ensure the right ROI to improve digital advertising impact?
Yeah. So this is where you can use a combination of, running modeling that, there's econometric models that you run to figure out what's your ROI across multiple channels, or there's ROAS that you can measure based on conversions that you're seeing in a particular platform. That is useful for in-channel optimization, the ROAS that display channel reports, or on a social platform, figuring out how your ads are doing, because they are able to clearly monitor end to end. When someone sees your ad based on a view-through ROI or ROAS, or a click-through ROAS, they're able to tell how well that engagement translated into sales. So those are two broad ways in which you can measure. One is the modeled impact. The other is purely from the platforms being able to end-to-end stitch together how someone's journey is in their platform. MTA, or multi-touch attribution, is another key way in which modeling can be done. With cookies going away in the next year or two, that's becoming harder and harder, but there are solutions that are also in the marketplace that will help you look cross-channel and figure out what the ROI is, so that you can dedupe the impact across channels.
Wonderful. And I hope, Catherine, this answers your question. So, Shriram, we can resume with the presentation and we can take up the questions after the mid-roll. So, guys, if you have any questions that you want to ask Ram, do put it in the questions tab, and Shriram would be happy to answer all your questions.
Perfect. All right. So moving to the fourth point, we want to track impressions, we want to track sales. It's important to do that. But I would also encourage you to break down impressions into reach versus frequency. Right. In this example, let's say you're an insurance provider selling auto insurance, and you're looking to reach people who might be in the market right now. Once in 6 months, they might be looking to switch their insurance, and potentially some of them are in the market to entertain another option. Here, it shows that you've been reaching a lot of people with a frequency of 2 impressions per week. There's many that are also in the 3 to 6 range, and some in the 7+ range and the 1 range. And you're able to figure out that, based on the conversion rate, which we can define as number of people who fill out an application for getting a quote for that insurance, you're able to figure out that you're not really getting much of a conversion in the first 2 impressions. Not everyone is convinced immediately about or thinking immediately about getting a quote from a competitive insurance if they're pretty happy, or they might not be at the right time or moment in their insurance renewal cycle. So what you're seeing here is much better conversion rates in the 3 to 6 frequency. Based on this, obviously you want to shift your dollars from hitting people in the 1 to 2 bucket to 3, 4, and 5 much more, so that you are able to reduce waste and be more effective in what I would call the effective frequency zone here. So the average here might have been 3.6, which doesn't mean necessarily that, we all know how averages work. With 3.6, there's a bunch of people sitting here with 2 impressions, and a lot of people also with 7 or more impressions who are probably getting annoyed and not necessarily acting on the ad. So you want to, even though the average might be 3.6, the effective frequency range was 3 through 6, and that's where you want to aim. So really set frequency minimums and caps to reduce waste and optimize your media impact. Some of you might say, you know what, I'm a small business, and right now my spend is so small that I really don't have to think about caps. But I'm sure your business, as it grows, or as you're thinking about ramping up spend during, let's say, a high season for your particular business, you would want to still consider these caps and minimums. Talking about seasonality, it's important to ride the wave of seasonality. Here I'm showing the example of chocolate, where, worldwide, the chocolate category, there's clear peaks during the 4th quarter when there's holidays or Valentine's Day here, and then there's a smaller peak for Mother's Day. And this pattern, pretty much 3 years in a row, you can see it repeats itself. And I'm sure if you went back in time, it would be fairly similar to this. Of course, 2020 was very different with the pandemic. People were completely changing their buying patterns and loading up their pantry. Chocolates were a stress reliever. So here you see a different pattern. But broadly speaking, there is a rhythm to every business and there's a seasonality to every category. So high season clearly is not the same as regular season. And so you want to think about the scale of audience in the high season. The number of people you attract or the types of people you attract would be different. So men who might not necessarily buy chocolates during the usual time of the year may be much more in market during Mother's Day to buy chocolates for their wife or children or for their moms, obviously. Weekly revenue would be different because their order size, they might be buying, like in the US, it'll be Halloween, or in India, it might be Diwali, where people might be increasing their order size for the occasion. But on the flip side, obviously, competition is thinking about the same thing. So you have a higher competition with higher cost per click and cost per acquisition that you've got to keep in mind. So what all these mean is that to take advantage of seasonal changes in your business, you want to balance the higher volume of consumers and products that are demanded with the premium that's also demanded in an equivalent way. We talked about CPC and CPM going up, so you would want to think about how to play that. And one approach could be, fill the funnel or prime the pump by advertising during the regular season so that people are aware of your products, of your brand, in time for the peak season. And then also factor in long-term ROI. We talked about measuring ROI, but many times you might be tempted to just measure ROI at that point and not think about the longer term or lifetime value ROI of someone. So I encourage you to think about that, because in the example of chocolates, and if men are in the market just during the high season, and if they really like that brand, they're going to stick with that for the long run rather than just in that one purchase cycle. So just think about the long-term ROI in any business. Same thing with insurance, or it doesn't matter what business you're in. Thinking about, again, that seasonal pattern and how it shifted in 2020, you do see that this pattern is something that companies would have to be ready for. So if you were a home decoration in the home decoration business during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic last year, people were spending more time at home and they were looking to repaint or remodel their home and thinking about decorating their home better. So you would have had to figure out an agile way to react to that changing circumstance. So what that means is you may have to pull forward funds that you would normally allocate for some other time of the year and be reactive in that moment. And what that also really needs is cross-functional collaboration. Because I know some companies that immediately needed to talk to finance to make those decisions. Also, some of the products that they might have expected to sell over 6 months, maybe selling out in 6 weeks. So that requires inventory management, pricing. All of those come into the picture. So it's not just a marketing or advertising question. At that point, it becomes a cross-functional collaborative exercise where people have to think about decisions related to pricing, product mix, and how much they want to get in terms of margin and so forth. All right. So to close that out, you got to ride the wave of seasonality, but you have to reflect the agility that is required in digital marketing. Point number 6 is online sales might only show a partial view of your business. So let's say in this example, someone comes in search of your product and they're searching organically to figure out the best, what kind of options are there for, let's say, insurance. And they might be served an ad on Facebook, and they might then be served an ad on a YouTube ad that they're seeing, and then they might go and search with intent and be hit with a paid search ad. Unless you're in a completely e-com oriented business, you're probably seeing a partial view of sales that's occurring online. And the full view really occurs when you take into account sales not just online, but offline as well. So what this means is you want to integrate offline sales to get a full picture. And one way to do that is through onboarders like LiveRamp, who take offline transactions and in a privacy-safe manner, they're able to pass it to a social platform like Facebook, where they are able to then, the platform is able to stitch together the view of someone who saw the ad to then not just their sales online by clicking onto the website and buying something, but also offline from the data that was onboarded. So that's one way to think about offline sales. And this is important for in-platform creative optimizations or audience targeting that you might change depending on who's converting the most and who is not. But there's a second way you can do this, which is through econometric models, where you quantify the incremental impact of marketing on total sales. And this total sales could be both offline and online. And that way, you're able to, again, get a fuller picture of your sales and not just relying on online. To sum that up, you want to measure success through both offline and online sales. I see a question about sharing some basic tips to prioritize budget across different media channels and platforms. Akanksha, there is no one easy answer to that. It is possible, again, back to my point earlier about building econometric models to figure out between different channels which ones have the best ROI, also which ones have the most room for you to allocate budget over time. So that is one approach. The other is, as you start putting in dollars in one channel that you think is the most impactful for you based on your budget and your business, sometimes it might be about being in a particular geography based on where you are strongest. So it is not just about the channel, but it's about the location, it's about the audience that you go after and so forth. But once you see that, back early on when I mentioned in point number 2, once you see diminishing returns set in and you're going below your acceptable threshold of either bottom line or top line growth in revenue, you would want to shift to channels where you think there might be higher impact. If you're a small business, you want to experiment a little bit initially to figure out, between the different digital channels after you do search, social, which, do you want to do display or online video would be a question that you might consider. There is no easy answer for any given business. It's about looking at it on a case-by-case basis, looking at your particular ROI in a given channel so that we can decide what is the next best place to invest the additional dollars. Okay. Talking about experimenting, that's my last point. You want to test, learn, and repeat those learnings. So design tests based on first generating hypotheses. So point number 1 is generate hypotheses. Does my 15-second ad work better, or is it a 30-second ad that I need to move people to convert and buy from me? Or should my creative, back to that skateboard example, should I show a creative that has more adventure and thrill-seeking kind of a creative that really inspires younger audiences, or do you want to have a more safety relatedness creative, which says, okay, everyone can safely practice or use a skateboard? So you want to test that. So you want your hypotheses will have to be clear, and then you design a test versus control experiment, and then you run that experiment to validate hypotheses. So I put that as a separate point because it's not immediately that you're going to see results. You're going to have to run that experiment for a few days or a few weeks, depending on what the question is and what the size of the audience is, and then you apply those learnings to a new campaign. Diving a little bit into designing test versus control experiments, this is in reality a topic in its own right. It could be a separate session by itself. At a high level, I will touch on three different ways in which experiments can be set up. One is the randomized controlled trial, which you can think of as the gold standard of testing. It is used routinely in the field of medicine for clinical trials, where literally when you expose, in this case, expose somebody to an ad, you have almost a mirror image of that person, probabilistically equivalent to that person, be it in terms of age, gender, household income, what kind of medical conditions they might have had if it's a pharma ad. So you wanna balance out everything about that person and expose such a person to an ad, and have a very similar person and not expose them to the ad to figure out what is the test versus control. Sometimes, in the next point, it's exposed versus unexposed. It's slightly different in the sense you cannot necessarily a priori take people and put them into random buckets of test versus control. In fact, let's take the example outside of the ad world, college education. If you have a hypothesis that income for those with college education are much higher than income for those without a college education, you don't want to pick and choose who goes to college. You don't want to prevent someone who wants to go to college from doing so. So in this case, it's more about after the fact, looking at people who did not go to college, comparing them to those who went to college, but also trying to control as much as possible for other factors, like what kind of household income did they grow up in, what kind of neighborhood were they in, and so forth. But there might be some factors that you'll never know, which is, were they inherently more motivated? And that's what got them not just to college, but got them to earn more later on in life. The last one is more aggregate. We talked about the first two at a more individual level, but match market would be where you take at the aggregate level, you take a few markets and you have twin markets to them and compare how sales did or brand performance did on the basis of media. So it might be 6 weeks of running a test. I know a client who said, let's invest double the amount of spend on TV compared to what we've been doing in the past. So they would choose 6 markets or 10 markets, and they would double the TV weights, and then after that 6 to 10 weeks of waiting, figure out what the impact is in the lift. And that's where, again, one has to control for various factors and run an analysis of covariance type of analysis to figure out what was the true lift when controlling for things like number of stores that were present in each market, or number of the price variation between the markets is controlled for. And that way you're able to think about isolating just the one variable, in this instance, say TV advertising levels, to figure out what impact that had. When it comes to experiments, you want to test a big change. This is important because you don't want to make something very small and expect to be able to read it. Initially, at least, as you're testing out what might work versus what might not, it's important to make changes that are pretty big, be it creative. Is it a 1-minute ad versus a 30-second ad? Or in the example I gave, do you want TV with double the investment or the same investment as in the past? Choose metrics that are tightly tied to your hypothesis. What does that mean? We all know that quality content is important when it comes to search results. It's not just about you bidding high for a keyword. Google also says it's important to have the right quality score or content. So let's say you have version A of your page that is you're selling shirts, fashion shirts, and you want to talk about how in the post-pandemic world people ought to dress, in special occasions or for office. You create a new page compared to the business as usual page, which talks about these fashion tips and goes into these types of ideas for how people should dress well. So you probably expect people to spend more time on the page, which should be your hypothesis, and not necessarily sales, because sales would come down the line after people read that page, click into it, review your products, because there your product selection is important, your price point is important, whether you have a discount compared to some other competitor is important. So really tightly tying your metric, in this case, number of minutes or number of seconds someone spent on a page that is version B versus version A is important. And then, of course, like we talked about, you want to pick the right matched test and control cells to do the test on, and then allow sufficient time to learn. You want to have the right amount of statistically significant audience to make that stat sig claim. And then once results arrive, act decisively. There are people who might say, "Oh, you know what? We learned it, but I don't trust it," or "I want to act 2 weeks from now when the season changes." You don't want to do that. You want to decide ahead of time that you're going to use that learning and move forward with confidence. And clearly, you want to iterate to test new hypotheses, because testing one thing could lead to another test. Where, in that example, if version B did work, what parts of that page were really most engaging could be another question you might have. Or you might move on to testing different offers. Should I offer 15% off, or should I have a certain dollar off? So constantly experiment and learn. This is something that's extremely important for every business, and I would encourage you to think about that for the sake of innovation and being agile in this digital advertising world. So really, that is broadly what I wanted to talk about. So to sum up, key takeaways. First, as we saw, think about the 2x2 matrix of effectiveness and efficiency to guide your decisions on spend. Allocate spend not just based on one single ROI number. We are all smart where we look at marginal returns. And then when that starts to diminish, we make changes to which channels we go into. So we start shifting budget using cross-channel saturation levels. Number 4, we talked about setting frequency minimums and caps to reduce waste and to improve the performance in terms of conversions. Seasonality is important in any business. How do we act with agility when it comes to seasonality? Number 6, some businesses may be pure online, but some businesses are offline. Even Amazon, which started as online, we all know they are now opening stores. So it's as you scale up, any business could think about both offline and online. And as I mentioned at the end, experiment constantly with the idea of innovating and being on the ball when it comes to making changes to your website or your creative or who you target and so forth. So with that, folks, really use data and analytics to take advantage of the agility, the fluidity, and the automation that you get in digital advertising. And I really hope you are able to use these learnings.
Great.
Thank you.
So Sriram, I must say that was a wonderful presentation. Thank you for sharing all those amazing insights with our lovely audience. And I'm sure everyone is enjoying this insightful session. Stay tuned, and we will be right back to take up the questions from after this session, and we'll be right back, guys.
Clarematics is a full-service video agency based around video production. We created a brand that fit our identity at the time, but as we've evolved as a company, we found that original brand didn't quite fit our aspirations anymore. Finding a partner to rebrand your entire company takes a lot of time and effort. Finding Designhill was an incredible lifeline. Designhill offers a money-back guarantee. If we don't like any of the designs, we get all of our money back. The stuff that we ended up with were well beyond what we had been seeing on other creative services platforms. After creating a simple design brief by answering some questions created by Designhill, we posted, and within a few days, we had over 250 entries. Designhill's platform made it easy to communicate with all of the potential designers. Eventually, we picked a winner. In addition to a logo, our designer also created a letterhead, business cards, and banners for all of our social media platforms. With Designhill's help, we now have a brand that meets our aspirations. We're ready for the future and everything that it's here to bring.
All right. So we are back again with our awesome guest, Sriram. So Sriram, let's quickly jump to the questions tab and see what our audience has to ask. So we take up the question from Nidhi now. So Nidhi is asking, what is the difference between data science analytics and business analytics?
Yeah, good question. And I know there's a lot of people who, have the same question in mind where a lot of these new terms are thrown about. I would think of, analytics as basically looking at tracking metrics to all the way to analyzing, as the name suggests, how the business is doing. And between business analytics and analytics, there isn't much of a difference. I mean, in the context of business, what you do is business analytics. Analytics obviously could be applied to any field. It could be applied to medicine. It could be applied to manufacturing and so forth. So that's not much of a difference. Data science goes to the level of, applying models, be it machine learning techniques or be it statistical analyses like regression techniques, or clustering and so forth, using algorithms to solve business problems or any problem. So again, in the field of medicine, it might be figuring out what kind of drug works between different patients, and so analyzing the relationship between one treatment and another, one treatment versus another on different disease conditions could be a data science example, right? So really, they're all interchangeably used, but data science is where you would apply algorithms to solve a question that might be more using a lot of data, big data, or small data. But really, with machine learning, you need big data. And someone's asking what exactly is big data or big data analytics. That's exactly what it is, Nidhi, which is, you have really, when it comes to, let's say, website analytics, you have millions of people available for analysis, versus in the past, if you ran a survey, you would probably talk to a few hundred people. That's not enough to make huge changes to a business that is moving fast. So you would have to conduct a lot more surveys to have the confidence, versus having, in the case of a website, the survey in a way is conducted among thousands of people and in quick time. And so big data is data that's generated in huge volumes that can be analyzed using machine learning and those algorithms. Drishti, you're asking, I'm curious about currently is the best social media platform, and based on your knowledge, the trends in analytics thus far. There isn't one answer to that question, because it depends really on your product and whether you have your audience who, I know that TikTok skews much younger than, say, Facebook. Instagram might be somewhere in the middle. So really, it is about knowing your audience and where they are, knowing your product and the price point and so forth, and then really choosing the one that is most appropriate based on those considerations. And in terms of analytics, all of these platforms are really good at offering you basic look at your audience, your conversions. You are able to request them through their insights tools. Request from them a lot of granular insights. So I believe once you start working with those platforms, you'll be able to see which ones are most suited to you.
Great. So we have another question from Jane. He's asking, what is the difference between data analytics and machine learning?
Data analytics could use machine learning. That's the way I would put it. Machine learning is really about using algorithms to solve a question that needs a lot of data, a lot of statistical firepower, and it's something that requires the use of data. So data analytics could use machine learning. Could be as simple as analytics could simply be comparing, or correlating two different data sets. That would be a simple example of analysis, but machine learning is just a more advanced form of data analytics.
Wonderful. So we have a question left from Catherine. She's asking, share with us at least 3 experiments you want to brands to experience to improve the impact of digital advertising.
Sure.
Let me put the question in the bigger screen. You
Yeah.
can see it here.
I had alluded to this a little bit before. One experiment could be, do you want to change the mix of channels? Someone asked, what channel should I invest in? You could think about, let's say you're right now investing much more in search and display. One experiment could be adding social or changing some of my dollar mix. Should I go from being on search and display to search, display, and social with incremental dollars? Or should I take some of the money from those two channels, first channels, and put it in the third channel? That could be an experiment. The other could be creative. An example could be what I mentioned, an adventure type of creative versus a safety message type of creative for skateboards, or a 30-second commercial versus 15-second commercial. So you can think of any number of hypotheses and tests that you want to run to test those hypotheses. Again, it really should be driven by your business needs and what is top of mind for you today.
All right. I hope, Catherine, this answers your question. And I guess, Sriram, we are done for the day. We have answered all the questions from the live audience. And I must say, we have covered a lot of insights. You have given a lot of insights to our amazing audience in a short period of time, in 45 minutes. And we are good to go now. So, all right, guys, this brings us to the end of this wonderful workshop with Sriram. This was indeed a value-packed session. Although there is a lot more that we could have learned, unfortunately, we are limited by time here. And I hope you guys loved this session, because I personally did. And once again, I would like to thank you, Sriram, for taking out time to be a part of this event.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right, guys, this is not where it ends. We have a lot more events lined up for you in the coming days. So if you guys are interested and haven't registered yet, I'm sharing the link of our events page, and you can register over there. You can subscribe to the events page and stay updated on all of our upcoming events. Also, do check out our Learn page to feed your inspiration and creativity. Multiply your business and creative growth 10 times by learning tips, hacks, growth stories, expert advice from the industry's best. Visit Designhill Learn page and don't forget to subscribe. On that note, I would like to say bye to everyone who joined us here today. Take care, guys, and stay safe.